Welcome in. We're going to be talking about the Super Wildcard weekend, the three AFC games that happened so far, and the two NFC games, just a little preview about what's happening around the NFL. This is happening before the Monday night game between the Bucks and the Cowboys. I'd like to preface this by saying that I have the Bucks in this game. I don't think Tom Brady will go out like this, end his Bucks career like this, potentially retire like this. So I do think the Bucks win this round, but I don't think they get very far in the playoffs. Overall, I've been correct on every pick so far. I've gotten the Niners, Jaguars, Bills, Giants, and Bengals. Each of those games have been actually really good, very fun to watch. Much better than last year's wildcard weekend with a couple of blowouts. So the only blowout so far has been that Niners game, and it was pretty close in the third quarter for that game as well. So overall, just very interesting weekend. Let's just dive right into it with the last game, which happened obviously last night against the Bengals and Ravens. As Chiefs fans, we would like to see the Bengals get eliminated early. Same with the Bills, which we're going to get to that after this. But, the Ravens gave the Bengals a run for their money. Without Lamar Jackson, it came down to the final play. Even it came down to a drop catch from James Prochet that if he caught, the Ravens might have gone for two and then won the game. So we never know what's going to happen with that. But the game was really close. They took the Bengals down. The entire game flipped on that 98-yard fumble return for a touchdown, where Tyler Huntley tried to jump from the 2-yard line, which is 6 feet, into the end zone, crossing the plate. Obviously, he didn't make it. And Logan Wilson of the Bengals popped it out. It somehow fell right into Hubbard's hands, and he ran all the way back for a 98-yard touchdown, which it's just like classic Bengals. Ever since last year, their defense has been forcing turnovers in the playoffs, getting some crazy plays. It's another example of that. The Cincinnati defense helping their offense win games, especially in a game where Cincinnati lost multiple starters on their offensive line. They were down their right tackle, right guard, left tackle, and had their second-round guard from last year playing left tackle, who held on most of these and got called for it a couple times. So that's just potentially to keep in mind next week for Bengals versus Bills. If the Bills can take advantage of that weak Bengals offensive line, get to Joe Burrow, because after that last starter went down, Jonah Williams went down at halftime. I didn't come back out for the second half. The Bengals really didn't score much, or they only scored one touchdown in the second half. It was only one touchdown in the second half, that Joe Burrow QB sneak. And then the rest of it was just Bengals went 3-and-out most of the time. They got a roughing the kicker on a punt that would give them 7 downs, then proceeded to go 3-and-out again. So if the Bills can take advantage, they could force a couple 3-and-outs from the Bengals, maybe a couple turnovers, like strip sacks, stuff like that. The Bills could win that way. And overall, the Bengals, they started the game good, got a touchdown on the first drive, field goal, everything like that. Obviously, it came down to that Hail Mary. So you never like to see that, but it's as a Bengals fan against a second-string quarterback. But it's a divisional game. Divisional games are always close. This next one we're going to be talking about, the Dolphins versus Bills. I think this is the biggest spread of the weekend. The Dolphins were the least favorite team in the whole weekend, and somehow kept it very close right down to the end. The Bills Josh Allen played a pretty decent game half the time, and had a pretty terrible game half the time, which is, similar to Josh Allen this year for a big stretch. A bad interception, a bad strip sack that turned into a fumble recovered for a touchdown, and then an interception that wasn't his fault, but still, this is just unlucky turnovers that are happening to the Bills at the wrong times that kept the Dolphins into this game. And the Dolphins most likely shouldn't have been into this game, especially with how their offense was playing. I think the Dolphins had one scoring drive that was long. Everything else was just result of turnovers. So it ended up being easier for the Dolphins than it probably should have been. And the Bills, and it was still down to the last under 2 minutes. The Dolphins could not get their playoff on 4th and 1. On 4th and 6, it's something incomplete or something, so they can't get the playoff there either. And the Bills just don't have. And the Bills just ended the game after that. Maybe not a controversial call, but the Dolphins lost their chance to win that game. Mike McDaniel could not get the plays out fast enough for his third string, 7th-round rookie quarterback. He did play well in the game. Jalen Waddle had some key drops early. Mike Gesicki had a drop that went right through his hands. Some good plays by the Bills defense, but these receivers, especially Jalen Waddle, has been making tough catches all year and could not come up with them in this game. Ultimately shifted this game towards the Bills' favor early, even though the Dolphins clawed back into it. If those early plays were going their way, they might have had a much better chance overall to win this game. And so, I'd just like to be saying this. So the Bills and the Bengals will be playing next week, Sunday at 4:30 p.m. Eastern. It's 4 p.m. Eastern, that's the game to watch next week. That's probably the closest game. It's probably the most interesting game. It's the rematch of that Week 16 canceled game. Unfortunately, we all know what happened there with Damar Hamlin's incident. He's doing much better right now. He's back in Buffalo with his team, so not much of a concern there. But rematch of the canceled game. I think Bengals fans most likely find it unfair that this game is not like at a neutral site or a coin toss between who hosts it, because obviously the Bengals do not have a chance to knock down the Bills to the 3 seed. So we'll see how this goes. I think the Bills do end up winning that game. Probably like a really close game, like a one-score game that they just has to come down to Josh Allen getting the ball at the end. I think the Bengals have suffered too much starters on their offensive line. Last year the Bengals had a worse offensive line and still made it to the Super Bowl. But like a lot of luck has gone their way so far, and I don't think that luck stays as hot against the Bills. I think the Bills win this game in a barn burner. And then talking about the last AFC game, the Chargers versus Jaguars. Obviously, as Chiefs fans, we've seen plenty of Chargers win over the years, multiple blown leads, but this probably was the biggest one. A 27-0 comeback, the third largest in playoff history. It felt insane that this could have happened. The Chargers ended the game +5 in the turnover differential and still found a way to lose the game, even after leading 27-0. So as a result of the bad offense from Justin Herbert and the Chargers, the Jaguars are able to come roaring back in the second half. Trevor Lawrence, after his first 4 interceptions, threw 4 touchdowns. Just a complete turnaround by him. So the Jaguars presented a tough challenge to the Chiefs back in the regular season. That game was close, not close until the end, but they were fighting the whole game. So for that game next week, just be looking for the Jaguars to never give up. They were down 27-0 in this game. They should have. None of the players ever gave up. They didn't think about that or anything. They scored a touchdown before half, come roaring back after half, kick the game-winning field goal. Some things about the Jaguars, so they had to show their entire deck of cards. They had to show every play they had created for specific situations. Brandon Staley probably had a good game plan for the early Jags offensive calls. And that's resulted in all the interceptions. Trevor Lawrence was probably a little bit skittish at the beginning as it's his first NFL playoff game. A little fun fact, Trevor Lawrence has never lost on a Saturday, dating back to high school. So the Chiefs are playing him on Saturday, so hopefully we can give him his first loss on a Saturday going into this game. And then overall, just the Chargers, they're going to have to fire Brandon Staley after this. I don't know how you keep him back, because the Chargers lost that dynamic part of their offense, throwing deep to Mike Williams, allowing him to make those contested catches, because Mike Williams played in a meaningless game against the Broncos last week. Another one of Brandon Staley's mistakes. And in this game, he didn't make enough adjustments. He wasn't aggressive enough with his offense to try to play to win. They just played to not lose, and that's what ended up costing them. So overall, for next week, I might have the game preview later. But for Jaguars, Chiefs, I do think Chiefs win this game, but it's gonna be it's gonna feel much closer than it did in the regular season. Jaguars on a big upswing, but the Chiefs, as we've seen this weekend, any game is really close. These games are battles of attrition. So the Chiefs having the bye this week was amazing. They're allowed to stay up, not have any chance of losing, be able to rest instead of being hurt. So they just come in well rested. They might come out a little bit slow, as the Chiefs often do after bye weeks. But I think they should end up winning the game. I think the Jaguars offense has shown enough to where Steve Spagnuolo can scheme up some things to stop them. And overall, I believe Chiefs win that game. And we'll talk more a little about later in the week if I have time to do that game preview. So let's talk about the NFC playoffs. So obviously, the Niners versus Seahawks. I was on a bus watching that game. Pretty interesting. Obviously, the Niners are going to win. Like, the Seahawks don't have enough talent to match the Niners' defense and offense. So even with Brock Purdy starting Mr. Irrelevant, suddenly becoming the best rookie quarterback in a while. We've seen, and the best rookie quarterback in his first postseason game, I think he had 4 total touchdowns. That's the most by any rookie quarterback in the playoffs ever. So that's going to be an interesting game. We'll see if the Niners can get up to the Super Bowl. I mean, I think they'll have to pass the Eagles. We'll talk about that in a second. So the Niners versus whoever wins tonight, Bucks Cowboys. I think the Niners beat either team pretty handily. I think they'll beat the Bucks by a lot. I think Cowboys can give them a run, but I still think the Niners can win that game pretty comfortably. They're just clicking on all cylinders. They're firing on all cylinders now, clicking on everything. Kyle Shanahan has made the game easy for Brock Purdy. It's going to end up coming down to probably the Niners-Eagles in the Super Bowl. But first, the Eagles have to play the Giants. The Eagles versus Giants for the third time. The Eagles have won the previous 2 matchups. The first matchup wasn't close. It was an Eagles blowout. The second matchup was close, and the Giants were not playing their starters. But that was the first game Jalen Hurts was back. I think now that he has more time to rest and come back, he'll be even better. I do think Eagles win this game. Even though I had the Giants beating the Vikings, I do think the Giants are a pretty good team. Daniel Jones obviously showed that he's a pretty good player. Saquon Barkley is always good. And the defense is good enough to get some things done in the big stages. But I think the talent of the Eagles, their running ability is just too much. It's going to be too much for the Giants. So I think Eagles win that game. As I said, the Niners already win this game. So I think, based on my other picks, I have the Chiefs-Bills obviously going to be played at a neutral site in the AFC Championship, and the Niners-Eagles being played at Philadelphia in the NFC Championship. So when we get to that stage, I'll talk about that. But those are my predictions so far. And that's it. So have a wonderful week. Hopefully you can see the Chiefs win this weekend, get into that AFC Championship game for the 5th straight time, and have a chance for their Super Bowl.